Now that we've covered the basic settings of OBS, we're going to go ahead and talk about what scenes and sources are, which is kind of the bread and butter of what you're putting together. Think of this black preview box as a blank canvas, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to add stuff to this canvas in a way that's attractive, in a way that looks appealing, in a way that's going to make our viewers really interested in what we are showing them. And it's quite easy once you get the hang of it. If you've ever played with any sort of image editing, program like Photoshop, you can understand the concept of layers. Essentially, you're going to place all these sources here in a certain order where they lay out one on top of the other, and it's going to create our scene. Now that we've touched upon the word scene, a scene is essentially a collection of sources. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a scene for an intro, for example, where you're going to have a graphic that tells your viewers the stream is starting soon. And that's going to be one of your scenes, and it's going to be set up a certain way with certain images, with certain animations. Then you're going to have another scene where perhaps it's your main scene where you have a video of the gameplay or whatever it is that you're showing your viewers, and your camera laid out over here, and you have your alerts, and you have everything set up. And then you might have an ending scene where you basically thank everyone for tuning in and let them know when you're going to be on next time, etc., etc. So today we'll cover how to create some basic scenes, and we'll cover out what the different sources are and what they do and how we can play around with them and transform them. And let's get started. So let's go ahead and set up our first scene. We're going to call this main game scene. And this is basically going to be the scene that contains the game that we're playing as a feature, and it's going to have a picture of us, via camera, and then our logo and everything else we want on the stream. So let's go ahead and add our first source. I like to work backwards, so I'll lay out what's in the background first and then work my way forward. I like to lay out what's in the background first and then work my way towards the foreground. And so we're going to start with our game capture. And we're going to call this game capture. We're going to call this Overwatch. You can use that for any game that you're playing, and it usually defaults to any full screen application. It's usually going to be a game. The problem with that is that if you run another application full screen, it will override. So if you're running, for example, a different software or something that takes up your full screen, it's gonna use that and it's gonna display that. I don't want to do that. I want to capture a specific window, and in this case, we don't have anything open right now. We have Chrome, and we have my Photos app, and we have the recording software that we're using. So we're going to go ahead and launch Overwatch. That's going to launch in a second. And you're going to be able to see that as a source immediately. Here. Capture specific window. Window and Overwatch, and it's going to pop in immediately. There we go. Now we want to leave this as is. Click OK. One of the things you're going to see is you're going to immediately see the preview. This game happens to be running at my native resolution, so it's going to be running at 1080p. It's going to immediately fill out my canvas. I can make sure that it fills out the full canvas by going to transform and then stretch to screen, and it should stretch everything if it doesn't look right in your case. So I like to keep my stream pretty minimal. Most streamers would agree that that's kind of the way to go. You want to showcase what you're sharing with the audience. In this case, it's a game. So if everything's kind of taking up the whole screen, it's kind of uncomfortable. So What I'm going to go ahead and do is just add my camera at this time. And I do have a green screen, so I'll show you how to set that up. It's a video capture device, and we're going to call it Webcam. We're going to give it a name, and it's our C920 webcam. We're going to make it visible, and immediately you're going to see me, and you're going to see the green screen behind me. Now, it's very important that you light the screen evenly so that the software can then extrapolate what those green pixels are and make it look seamlessly transparent, and I'll show you in a second here. So I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. I don't want to touch anything here, just gonna click OK, and there we go. Now, how do we set up a green screen? So we have our different layers. Our webcam is on top of our Overwatch. As you can see, you can drag these over each other, and you're gonna see that that's my layer. I want to go ahead and move my camera to somewhere where it makes more sense if I'm streaming Overwatch. So I think this is fine. Kind of crops out my microphone, right? And then we're going to right click on my webcam, and we're going to click on filters. And we're going to set up an effect filter called chroma key. Now, chroma key is a green screen, so I like to call it green screen. I'm going to leave it there. Right off the bat, it's going to work. It knows that green is a default for most people, so it just works. If you need to play around with these settings, you can play around with these settings. I generally don't like to mess with this more than I need to. As you can see, there's all sorts of little tricks that you can do to make it look a certain way, but that works for me. It's just immediate. So go ahead and click close, and now we've just made our background disappear. Everything looks attractive, everything looks great. We're good to go. Next up, we're going to play with our audio settings. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to configure our sound setting so that it sounds more pleasing to our viewers. Now, OBS has two tools that are very important. One is the mixer. You're going to be able to see in real time your microphone settings down here, and you can kind of tell what it sounds like. Right now it looks to be a little low. Generally speaking, we should be peaking out around here. We can increase our volume, really our gain is what the real term is, in one of two ways. The first one is we can go into our recording devices panel, we can go into properties, we can go to levels, and we can go ahead and increase that to somewhere more attractive. And that should definitely help out. As you can see below, it's already affecting our recording. So we want to make sure that that is set at around there. That looks good to me. So that's from the Windows side. What if we want to increase the gain from the OBS side? Well, the second tool that we're going to use is called filters. And just like you can have different filters for your video sources, you can have different filters for your audio sources. In this case, the first thing we want to play around with is something called noise suppression. Now we're going to go ahead and add this. What noise suppression is going to do is it's going to make all this kind of white noise that's in the background that my very sensitive, very beautiful microphone is picking up, and it's going to make sure that it keeps it down to a minimum when I'm not talking. It doesn't pick anything of that up. So if I go ahead and I move this towards the left and I remain quiet, you're going to see it's going to go down significantly. You see that? Start it up here. It's picking up all that noise. You see the baseline green? We're going to lower it significantly. Watch this. I mean, that's as low as it's going to get. But we're going to make it even better now. We're going to add a noise gate. And a noise gate is one of the coolest things in OBS. It essentially tells your microphone, turn on when you hear me speaking, turn off when you don't hear me speaking, so that it's a clean cut. There's no recording of that low hiss. There's nothing. And if you look at just the default settings right now, right off the bat, you're going to see that while I'm speaking, this is going to appear green. As soon as I'm done speaking, it's going to cut my microphone. So that's perfect. Now I'm going to go into detail of what attack, hold, and release are. But for now, the first thing we want to set up is our close and open threshold. So our close threshold is how quiet do I need to be for this to turn off? And my open threshold is how loud do I need to be for this to turn on? And you can play around with these values. I tend to move them a little bit closer. Raising my close is something that I do right off the bat, and then that looks about right. I mean, for the most part, the way it's behaving versus the way I'm talking, it's shutting off when I'm not talking, and it's turning back on almost immediately. There's a way to make this even more to your liking. I wouldn't touch these settings usually right off the bat. These settings are good. Basically, attack time is, in milliseconds, how many milliseconds does it take for it to start recording? 25 milliseconds is extremely fast. Hold time is how long does it keep the microphone open? And then release time is how long it takes to shut down the microphone. And it's usually a gradual thing. So we're going to leave that there. The last thing we want to do is add a gain filter. Now, I don't generally think I need this because obviously my mic is pretty good. And if my mic is closer to my mouth, it's going to sound a little bit different. Right where I want my microphone, where I position my microphone, is a good distance from my face. It's off camera. It's picking everything up pretty well. If I want to increase my overall volume or my gain, I can just slide this to the right. And as you can see, it's going overboard. But what's happening is it's going all the way to the right where it's hitting the top end. But what's happening is it's going all the way to the right where it's hitting the top end. And that, my friends, is called clipping. And that is going to sound awful. It's going to distort everything once it gets to the top end. So we definitely never want to be there. We want to make sure that we are 3/4 of the way there or more towards the middle. So that looks good to me. Just a very slight gain that we're applying here. Usually I leave it at default, but today we're gonna play around with it a little bit. We're gonna leave it around there, and that sounds good. Okay, we're gonna close this, and that's it for the sound setup. Okay, so now we've set up our main scene with our game overlay, with our webcam, and our green screen filter, and we've also set up our audio filters: noise suppression, audio gate, and gain. Sounds pretty good, looks pretty good. We're good to go. We're ready to start streaming, right? Well, not so fast. What about our intro scene? What about our outro scene? What about our branding? So what you want to try to do is, before you start streaming, is think about what you want your viewers to see that's consistent. In my case, I've prepared some graphics beforehand, and there's some free graphics packages out there that's going to let you basically do this pretty quickly. I did this in Photoshop. You can do this using any software. I just want to insert my logo onto my stream. So how do I do that? I add an image source, and I can browse, and it's under my stream graphics and my stream overlay graphics. And here we are. This is my logo. It looks huge, but I can resize it and I can set it to whatever I want. So that looks pretty good to me, right? Same thing with any other overlays. If I want to add another image, and we're going to call this camera bounding box. We're going to go ahead and select this one, and we're going to resize it. something like this. Now, I use a green screen, so technically speaking, there's no need for me to use something like this. It looks cool if I did have something in the background, but for the most part, it's whatever your creativity, whatever your mind wants, you can create it here in OBS. You can lay out graphics, you can lay out images, you can show people whatever you want on here. Really, the sky's the limit. This is just an example, and it works pretty well. I can select this, I can click delete and remove this. It's pretty quick. I like to keep my stream minimal. I like my branding on here, DZTV, Danny Z. This is my channel, and I think this is good enough for me. Simple is better sometimes, especially if you're using a green screen. Now, if you don't have a green screen, I do suggest you use some sort of camera overlay on that, and we'll go ahead and provide that in the links below. Now we're going to go ahead and set up our intro scene, and it's quite simple. We're going to call it intro scene, and you're going to start with a blank canvas. And we're going to go into our images, and we're going to call this intro background. I'm going to browse to our images that we've had from before. I had a Fallout stream for a long time, and so I found this Fallout graphic, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I'm going to use that as my intro. What this is going to do is, while I'm going into the stream, it's going to play some music, and it's going to do whatever I want it to do, but it's going to mute my microphone. It's going to basically be an intro scene where my viewers can gather before I start streaming, and then I can switch to my main scene. So you can see those are the intro transitions. It's pretty smooth. Here's kind of your default scene transitions and how fast they operate. You can have different styles of transitions. And I'll just give you an example of what that looks like. You can play around with this as much as you want. Again, I like to keep it simple. And now I'm going to add an outro scene. So we're going to call it outro. And this is more of a thanks for watching type scene. And while I haven't prepared a graphics package for that, we're gonna create something really interesting here. Now, in order to put our outro scene together, I want to do something different. I want to bring in a video source, which is basically a video that I had prepared. It's a 1080p video. And I want to play it. And it's got a loop, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click Add Files. I'm going to go up to my graphics, and I'm going to select my video. I'm going to make sure it's full screen, and I'm going to click OK. And this is going to be my outro. It's essentially an MP4 video that's looping. And that looks great. So if I come in and I'm starting my stream, I can start with my intro scene. As soon as I want to start changing to gameplay, we're playing, we're doing stuff. I want to switch to an outro scene. It's pretty seamless, right? And it looks cool. And this is something that we put together in 5 minutes. So, if I can do this, you can do this. It's pretty quite remarkable what you can do nowadays with Twitch and Facebook Live and all these streaming platforms. But what OBS, open broadcaster software allows you to do is put something out there that's quality, and that's it. We're ready to go. The last thing I want to do is I want to go into settings, and I want to make sure that my hotkeys are set up for the different transitions. So switch to intro scene. I'm going to set that to Control-Shift-1. Show intro. Main game scene, Control-2. And outro, Control-3. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead and click apply. So now if I switch Control-Shift-1, Control-Shift-2, Control-Shift-3, as you can see, I'm not using my mouse. I'm basically just flipping around the scenes as I need to. So if I'm in the middle of something comes up, let's say I need to mute my microphone, I can mute my microphone here or set up a hotkey to mute my microphone and switch to the scene immediately and control my stream from here. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. This is all you really need to start streaming. We're going to have more detailed tutorials on how to set up donations and how to set up all that stuff, but essentially speaking, this is it. You can hit start streaming. It's going to connect to Twitch. I had already pre-opened this in another window. We're going to go ahead and refresh, and you're going to see in a second what we're able to put together for our audience. Let's let it load. Another window. We're going to go ahead and refresh, and you're going to see in a second what we're able to put together for our audience. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been streamingbundles.com. Danny Z here. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Hope it helps you. If you have any questions, you can always find us on streamingbundles.com. Thanks for watching, support. Guys. You can find some more information there. You can find us on social media, on Instagram. Enjoyed this tutorial. Hope it at streamingbundles. If you have any questions, and again, I'm Danny Z. Thanks for watching. Streamingbundles.com.